Hello YouTube, I'm back again with another video. I'm going to be going back on my One Piece deck profile. I've almost completed my deck, but the only thing, there definitely needs to be some substitutes because I still haven't got my playset of Queens. Let's be real, the price is just over the top. Uh, Man, it's hard to get the structure deck, so for now, it's almost complete, but this is the build that I'm truly in love with simply because of the idea, the passion I have towards deck, and just the innovation it has, and just the creativity. Just looking at it, it's just very interesting, and I can't help but to look at it. But I want to play with this deck for most of my life. So, besides all my compliments towards this deck, I'm just gonna get straight to it. Just the one Kaya. I could go. Personally, I don't feel comfortable playing more than two. For now, I think one is fine because it is extra draw power. On top of that, it's a 2K counter. But even though you can't search it, having the extra 2K counter always helps. Plus, it's another draw, but you don't really plus. You're still forced to give it two after you draw two. So obviously we're playing standard. For Miss All Sunday, for Who's Who. We also include the new purple Sasagi, just like two of. It's also a 2K counter like the blue Sasaki, but normally, sometimes what you're gonna do is, I feel like consider how important Dawn is, but sometimes if you don't use its 2K counter, you'll sometimes summon it, you pay the 3 Dawn, but when it's attacking, it'll gain a Dawn, but you discard one to add a Dawn, rest of Dawn. So just in case you want to see your big strong characters earlier in the game, you might want to include him, but overall, just a very useful 2K counter as well as a useful main effect or when he attacks. So obviously, just playing for Sasaki, some people are deciding to, but again, easily searchable with Who's Who because he's an Animal Kingdom Pirate card. But on top of that, on play, he shuffles your hand and he just helps you fix your hand, even though you don't really plus. But in case you don't really like the hand that you have, again, it, I still feel it's neat because like just being able to recycle your hand and then draw a new fresh hand makes a huge difference along the way. So, but on top of that, like you're really not going to use that much. It's mainly just a 2K counter. Another 2K counter I want to mention is Khalifa. Although she's not an Animal Kingdom Power card, I feel like you have to play for it because her ability when she attacks is just too good. Because when she attacks, you can minus one Dawn, and if you do, you draw two cards and you minus one. So you draw two cards, discard one card. That in itself is literally essentially a plus one. And even though again, it's a purple card. Even though you can't add it with your Who's Who, if you can draw into it, at least if you manage to see it on time, that will really help because a lot of times, yes, most of the time you can use it for a 2K count, but if you don't have anything else in hand, you might as well summon her or keep her hand, whatever, just to help you build a big board, just be able to help you just gain more advantage. And top of that, like it's like another option for Queen, but like definitely would not replace her. And you'll notice I got rid of most of the bro cards. The only reason why we're playing Crocodile is to be able to use Missile Sunday's effect, but most of the bro cards aren't so good. That's the main issue. So even though you can't search Khalifa, you can't search Missile Sunday with Who's Who, but at the same time their effects are very heavily useful because they can really change the tide of the duel, just being able to allow you to get to your key cards and be able to like hinder your opponent's field and be able to help you get into your best board. So again, I'm going to be very attached to this card. For now, this is probably I'm just using a playset of Black Mirror because she's a blocker that can easily be summoned. But the reason you'll notice with my curve, it's very nice. I'm mainly playing like a bunch of fours. Um, a lot of them tend to be some of them are threes, and one thing I want to take note is these are my only threes. But the reason why I'm playing a lot of fours because I feel like they help you build your field. Like they help you get more advantage. Like you want to have more cards on the field a lot more quicker. So, but again, her effect isn't a great big deal. It was the same thing with Mr. Four. You just minus one. She becomes a blocker and she gains 1,000 power whenever your opponent declares an attack. But eventually, this should be queen. I'm definitely gonna remove her, but this is just a substitute. But overall, you can still play her even if you don't have your play set of queen. If you don't have Axton, by all means, still helps because you can still see her on your second turn at least. If you're going second, but again, just more accessible. But overall, we can't say she's better than queen. So even though she's her queen herself, like in the looks comparison, so obviously we're playing the new ulti. This is from OP05. So yeah, a lot of the cards are also from OP05. I forgot to mention Khalifa was there as well, including my bad. So but ulti is definitely a great replacement for Miss All Sunday. I mean, sorry, Miss Valentine. I apologize. So let me rephrase her effect. On play, when she's summoned, if you have a multicolored, which we do, a multicolored leader, which is Crocodile, you get to excavate the top three. You get to add one card out of three, and you get to place them in any order, whether it be top or bottom. So I feel like you have to play for this card. Not only is she a 5k attacker with that much power, she gives you consistency. So you're always going to be able to hit your opponent's leader with this card, as well as get more consistency, which just a great card. There's really going to be no replacements for her, like unless there's some really big consistency cards that's going to be released in the new OP set. But I honestly can't really reconsider her, but she's staying in the deck, whole playset, permanent. And a card that's staying permanent is Basil Hawkins. The reason why I like him, he kind of similar to Black Maria because he has 5k powers, was costs like 4 Dawn. Again, you'll notice that that's what mostly what my deck is like like utilizes. But again, his blocking, but he's always going to be a blocker. The reason why I say that because you don't have to minus a Dawn when your opponent attacks. Obviously, he becomes a blocker. But if you have 3 or less cards in hand, you get to draw 1 card. So it essentially helps you gain more 2k counters, get more cards. But and then he gains 1,000 power, just like Black Mirror, but essentially way better than Black Mirror because you don't have to lose minus any Dawn for it. So, but this is a card I wouldn't really consider getting rid of. Like, feel like you need a playset because of just being able to draw a card, even though it requires 3 cards. You can't go wrong with that, honestly. And just the one purple ulti, like, but it can the on-field effect can be situation. I understand why people would want to max out because they want to see the odds of being able to use her effect. But at the same time, I feel like there's just more better options. So when we see more replacements, depending on the replacements, I feel like you're not going to use her that often. So I understand the logic, but you're just better off playing one, in my opinion. So because if it happens, it happens. But if you need a way to have more cons of field that can do more than just summon a specific monster from it. If it was from deck, I mean, cool. Then you would have to play you'd have to play at least 4 copies. But the fact that it's from hand makes it that much weaker since it's specifically a page 4 that costs like 4 Dawn or less. So. Card that we're playing one of is X-Drake and Scratch Manapoo. I'll go into X-Drake. Some people play multiple copies, or they play 4, but because he's a 5-drop and he's a 5k, not that that's bad, it's just that like his on play effect, you're not going to use it that often because you got a minus stuff. Your opponent discards 1 random card. I think they choose. But I feel like it's good unless near the end of the game. But a lot of times you're just going to use a 2k counter, but sometimes being able to minus Dawn just to get rid of 1 card from isn't really make that much difference early game. But you do that, I feel like it's really handy late game because it ensures it gets rid of your opponent's like coverage, again the 2k counters, and it opens up for you the opportunity to actually just outright destroy them and get rid of all the shields as well as wipe them out for game. Which we're going to get into another card later, but that won't be near the end. So, Scratchman 2 Poo, again, he's a vanilla that has 6k power, just 4 Dawn, costs easy, but just we need as many strong characters we can summon with less Dawn. Just again, another alternative. So, if you want, you can replace it for another 6k character that costs 4 Dawn that could be either purple or blue. And considering blue, speaking of blue, we're playing 4 page 1. You could play the purple one, but I feel like this card actually, in a way, has good synergy with my leader. So the logic behind is that not only is he a character that costs 4 Dawn, he has 6k power, but on top of that, anytime you activate an event, even though we're not playing too many, if you activate an event, but you would do that after you resolve your leader's effect first. But when you activate an event, you can attach a Dawn to this card. You draw one, you place one card from bottom. Uh, one card from hand at the bottom of your deck. So the reason why it's useful is like you're essentially passing more with card. It's making sure that you have just a fix your hand, even though it work with all your other page ones, but at the same time you don't want to do it that often. But I feel like just it has good synergy with my leader, with the purple blue crocodile. In case there's gonna be more after, I don't know, but just again, just really strong character. You're not again. My plan's not to use him as a 2K counter or I mean a counter card, but just strong enough to hit the leader, and you want to hit your leader as much as you can, just to open up a win for you. So because because the more creatures you have, or I mean the more characters you have that have at least 5K power, chances are you're gonna win. You're gonna put your opponent under a lot of pressure. So. But now we're going to our heavy hitters, which so we're almost done our characters. You guys be patient. We're almost done. We're almost there soon. So before we get into our events, we're going to go into our final big main boss monsters, the two blue Kaido, which is him in his hybrid form. I've really not much to explain, but he has an effect when he on play when he enters the field. Isn't the best out of the ones you see, but when he enters the field, you can target one character that costs 8 or less, as well as one other character that costs like 3 or less, if I'm right. But just being able to, even though it doesn't already get rid of the cards, it's it slowly gets rid of a bunch of characters from your opponent's field, or sometimes you can just loop with your characters. But again, opens up more opportunities. Has a 12k power, so your opponent's gonna have a hard time countering it besides blocking it. But having a 12k a character with power is just enough for them to either waste their counters or for them to concede the duel. But even though he does, again, it would be nice if, of course, well, we expect the best cards out there, but it just puts a lot of pressure on the opponent. And what I literally mean is that the counters won't be enough, and you don't really have to. And the reason why I bring it up because there's no really reason to give him any Dawn unless you're facing off against a character that has at least 13k 13k power. So unless there's gonna be a character that exists that has over 13k, there's really no reason to give him any Dawn as well as the other uh, main boss characters that we have. Which you see here, the other blue Kaido, the dragon one, is actually the best. It's a new card from OP05. Um, Same for Basil Hawkins, but I feel like he's the best uh, 10 cost character in my deck because on play literally is insane. If your opponent has 3 life cards less, you could literally get draw 4 cards. But you could go with more, but I want to make sure that because again, it costs you all your Dawn, but at the same time, I want to make sure I have my I want to see my key cards too. So sometimes like playing too many doesn't always help because sometimes you'll see too many of the same Kaido. So you want to ensure that you have a better chance of seeing your other cards. I apologize, your other cards, but being able to draw 4 cards, maybe if it costs less, maybe I'll definitely go with 4 with the playset, but it's so that you can go into your other alternative win conditions. So just being able to have him out, and I feel like he serves a good purpose as well as the other cards you're going to see later, which is our final character. We'll be playing Monkey D. Luffy 119 for OP05 and 119. He is, oh my god. I didn't get to really use his effect that much, but when I read his effect, I was very shocked and I was very impressed at how you can actually. Some people might not understand, but I understand how to actually utilize this card carefully. And this card can give you key clinching wins. I'm not even kidding. So basically, where I'll explain the effect. It has another good effect too, but um, you minus all your Dawn when you summon him. But on top of that, you get extra turn, and you get to. So when you get an extra, he gets to attack the next turn, and your opponent doesn't get a turn on. But the logic behind it is that you want to be sure to ambush your characters. I mean, ambush your opponent's leader with all your strong characters. Make sure they have no shields. You only want this when they have no shields. Once they have no shields, and you haven't used any of your Dawn yet, you still have 10. Is the time for you to summon Monkey D. Luffy Gear 5, or people prefer to call it OP05-119. And even though you're forced to get rid of all the other characters but him. He essentially gets you the win because like once you have to make sure they use because what other resource to have besides the blocker, because you want to get rid of the blockers first, you want to get rid of all the shields, you want to get rid of as many as their counters as possible from hand, and that's essentially that's an easy one to figure out. It's just that easy to figure out. Like some people not realize, but I feel like again, not only am I a fan, it's like not only do I really not only was I inspired to build this deck because I watched the anime, but I feel this card is a game clinching success. You just have to know how to utilize it. Because once you do, as it's like, then you pretty much have met the conditions in order to get your win. You figured out once you depleted all their shields, once they don't have that many 2K counters in hand, is now is for you to have the opportunity to actually outright just destroy your opponent the next turn by just basically, again, he's a card that determines the game, just like how Joy Boy determines the laws of physics. So basically, this game is basically determining the laws of physics. So what I mean by that, like, it changes the way you duel. Like, you're not gonna just simply have one battle phase. You're gonna have more than one battle phase because and that makes a huge difference. It just feels like that's something that's important because you catch your opponent off guard because they feel like once your battle phase ends, once you attack all your characters and you have even though you haven't used all your dawn, even though they are people they're gonna be aware of, that's the time you change the game and you basically determine by even though you didn't kill your opponent that battle phase, you'll be able to skip your opponent's turn and then you get to end them the next turn. And on top of that, that next turn, you not only do you get to draw a card, you get 2 more Dawn. And Luffy here, this Luffy allows you to add an extra Dawn by tapping 1 Dawn. So it helps you essentially be able to ramp for more Dawn, even though it's going to cost you all your Dawn. But again, it is optional because it does have the minus. But again, this card helps you easily figure out how to beat your opponent. Because I feel like once they have no shields, once they lost out all their resources, all their blockers, then this card is basically the way how should I say is the best way to meet your victory is basically your way to victory. You get to see your victory that much easier. Your way to victory, and by looking this card now's the time it become like for you is your only option, and it becomes a miracle. Like just understanding like once you figured out what you've done, once your opponent has no more outs, is the time is when you want summon. You always save your best cards for last. I feel like I said too much, but going back to the events, 3,000 words. I feel like I want to also correct myself about the last one, but I'm gonna explain that later. But on during the main, you can return 1 character. I think has with the cost of 5 Dawn or less. Let me read that correctly. Yes, I'm correct. And on top of that, if this card is triggered, you can place 1 character with the cost of 3 or less onto the bottom of the deck. And our final card happens to be Red Rock. We're not going to really change this all. And then again, even though it costs us 6 Dawn, this card I'm not going to really ever substitute because I feel like it's very important. Maxion's card is too good. It's too important because the amount of characters that are going to end up a problem for you. So just get rid of any character. So basically, let me explain. Its main effect is similar to 3,000 rules, but better, even though it costs you 6 Dawn. You get to return any character from the field on the bottom deck. On top of that, if this card is triggered, you get to return 1 character with the cost of 4 or less, mind you, on the bottom deck. They pretty much all have the same effects, but this one just costs more, but it's just more efficient, more effective, better than 3,000 rules, even though 3,000 rules is more useful too. Placing characters at the bottom deck is just too good because like, even though you can't really revive One Piece characters from the grid, but essentially because there are characters that cannot be destroyed by effects. But doing that it makes it so that they have a hard time retrieving that monster from there. It decreases the odds of them drawing to the monster depending how many copies of that card they play. Because not only does it cost a lot to play that character, even though they end up racking up more Dawn, like when the game goes by. But it's like at the same time, it's very important like to get rid of their best characters, because if you don't, you put yourself in a very dire situation where you may end up with less cards, you end up with less users, and then which will lead to you losing to your opponent, which will end up to them gaining easy advantage over you. So, but that's why again I feel like the ratio for events is enough, because someone made a good point. Sometimes if you play too many events, it decreases the odds of you seeing characters, and the characters play a major part in the game, so they are a huge factor. The events, they usually want to play the more important events. Do you feel like that are gonna basically help you not only with your duels, but that actually do make a difference in the game. So which why I'm just considering just playing these six events, and I feel like they won't let me down. So I have the option whether what character I want to get rid of or if I want to, and it's hard to really substitute cards because you want to see as many characters as possible, and that's what the game has led to. Because the more characters you have, again, it just opens up a lot of opportunities for you to outright beat your opponent as quickly as possible, and that's the whole point of the game. That's any card game, but it's like by seeing more events, I feel like unfortunately is a disadvantage, because like it doesn't reduce consistency, it reduces your summons. So you have having more summons is also a good thing, but having also you want to be able to have more 2K counters, more blockers. So those combined, you you need to be able to focus on characters with 2K counters, blockers, and ones that either search, draw you cards, or that have a lot of power, or also happen you have to have the right amount of boss ones so that you can put your opponent at a like again at a loss for words, at a lot of pressure, so they feel overwhelmed, and that again that having those kind of like factoring those kind of cards and what type of cards you need that are like that help basically make a difference in the game. Those are the things you need to factor in order to make you realize that it should be enough, and that they will lead you a long way throughout the game, and that they're like you need to know which cards are important, and that you need to play a specific ratio. And what you might be doing wrong is if you're playing too many events, is that it can also lead you to your downfall. And that playing character, because the characters have important like types that you need to consider that will help you be able to add more coverage and ensure that your deck does not lose so quickly into the game, and that so that so that you don't your opponent doesn't cut to the chase and just annihilate you, because that's what this game is about. Because yeah, back then trading cards were like that. We had to play a specific amount of spells. You could have a good number of spells, traps, whatever. But at the same time, yeah, having more characters does matter at this point, because like, and based on like from what I've seen is that having more characters, as well as especially if they have counters or blockers, is a good hand. Is always going to be a good hand, because that's what I was supposed to say. Like, it just feels like it's always going to be a good hand if you see a bunch of characters. Mostly characters that have 2K counters, whatever counter blockers, or that have big, and you don't draw too many of your big boss monsters early in the game, because sometimes that can hurt you with your consistency. And again, it's just the fact that some like, events really clunk up your consistency and don't really help if you see too many of them. But going back again, this deck did inspire me, so I had to play my cards just correctly. I don't regret playing the one card, because like the whole purpose is you want to see as many strong characters as possible. You want to have opportunities. You want to open up plays. You want to be sure to push your opponent even further to the so that they can concede the duel, and that I feel with this deck, I not only do I understand have more control, and I feel like I figure the strategy myself. And again, there should if there were to be replacements, it's going to be very few. It's like I said before, Black Mirror for Queen, but now the price is just not worth it. I just feel like, especially 50 a piece, you got to spend around 200 to get your playset. Even though it makes a huge difference. It does, even though, and people try to make it seem mandatory, which is not. Like, it's not a rush. Like again, I can always have time to pick it up when necessary. But just now for a card game, like, it's not a reason to throw that amount of money for nothing. Because even if you do have the card, are you gonna really be satisfied after? Because you spent a lot of money, but like, are you winning that many games? Like you also gotta figure out results after. Like you gotta notice the results if you're ever. Even not saying it's a bad card, but are you really getting that many wins considering how much money you spend? Just think about it. But again, I feel like I said enough. You guys, again, hopefully you guys enjoy the videos. Be sure to check your notifications, comment, like, subscribe. Thank you.